I'm going to take you into a moment that, if you had told me about it beforehand, I would have sworn could never happen. And yet, it did. And from that moment on, the course of my life bent into a shape I could never have imagined. It began on a day like any other. At least, that's what I told myself. The sun was low, the sky a muted gray, its light barely spilling into the quiet street outside. The air inside the house was still, too still, the kind of stillness that makes you feel as if the walls themselves are holding their breath. I had crossed this hallway 100 times before, but that day, something was different. I saw it before I even realized I had stopped walking. The door. Not wide open. Not firmly shut. Just, slightly ajar. It shouldn't have meant anything. A door left like that happens all the time. But the moment my eyes caught that sliver of space, something in me stilled. A wave moved through me, not violent, not loud, but unsettling. Like cold water rising slowly around your ankles before you even notice you're sinking. I stood there, rooted to the spot, one hand brushing against the wall beside me, the other loosely holding the notebook I'd been carrying. And in that moment, the weight of choice pressed down on me. I could have stepped back. Turned away. Pretended I hadn't seen. But I didn't. Instead, I took one step forward, small, but enough to seal my fate. Because deep down, I knew, once I looked inside, nothing would be the same again. A strange clarity passed over me, sharp enough to sting. It was the kind of moment when your heart knows the truth before your mind catches up, when the air feels heavier, as if it's warning you to turn back. But I didn't turn back. I can't. Even now, telling this story, I still feel the echo of that moment, the way my pulse quickened, the way my breath caught halfway in my throat. I remember thinking, this is it. Whatever is on the other side of that door is going to follow me forever. Chapter 2, The Weight of Silence. The hallway stretched ahead of me, dim and narrow, the light from the windows barely touching its edges. Every sound in the house seemed amplified, not because there were many, but because there were so few. It was that kind of silence that isn't peaceful, but heavy. A silence that makes you notice the smallest things, your own breathing, the faint creak of the floor beneath your feet, the soft ticking of a clock somewhere far off. Mark was downstairs, seated at his desk, his posture slightly slumped, the weight of the day draped over his shoulders like a leaden coat. He hadn't said much all afternoon. The house seemed to match his mood, muted, slow, unwilling to stir. Shadows from the late sun clung to the corners of the rooms, stretching long, as if they had secrets they weren't ready to let go of. And maybe, they did. For a moment, I thought the silence was complete. And then I heard it. A faint sound. So faint I almost thought I imagined it. A low, indistinct murmur, drifting from above. It wasn't clear enough to make out the words, but it was enough to set my nerves on edge. I tilted my head, listening harder. There it was again, muffled, distant, but undeniably there. My mind immediately went to Liam. He had been upstairs most of the day, shut away in his room. At first, I thought nothing of it. He often kept to himself, a young man caught in the quiet loops of his own thoughts. But that day, something about it felt different. The stillness wasn't simply him being alone, it felt like he was carrying something in that room, something unspoken. Maybe he just wanted coffee. Maybe he was watching something on his laptop. Maybe. But there was a pull, a subtle, inexplicable pull, that told me I should check. Not out of obligation, but out of a strange, almost reluctant curiosity. As I began to climb the stairs, the sensation grew heavier. With each step, the faint sound seemed to sharpen. Not louder, but clearer in my mind, as if my attention was tuning itself to it. By the time I reached the landing, I could feel it. That quiet tension, that invisible static in the air. And then I saw it again. The door. Slightly open. Not enough to reveal the room, but enough to let a strip of dim light spill into the hallway. I hesitated, my fingertips brushing the edge of the frame, that would cool against my skin. Something in me whispered to call his name. But another voice, the quieter one, told me not to. Chapter 3, Liam in the Shadows. I stood there, barely breathing, my hand lingering on the doorframe as if the wood itself could steady me. The strip of light from inside his room stretched across the hallway floor like a narrow, beckoning path. With the faintest push, the door gave way just enough for me to see. At first, it was only shadows, the kind that shift and ripple in dim light, not from movement, but from the way your eyes adjust in slow, hesitant focus. My gaze traveled across the room, and then it landed on him. Liam. He was perched on the edge of his bed, his back slightly hunched, the glow from his laptop casting a pale light upward, painting his face in flickering highlights. It was the kind of light that reveals everything and nothing at once, sharp around the eyes, soft at the edges, hiding more than it showed. The screen itself was bright, too bright for the dimness of the room. It made him seem almost separate from his surroundings, as if the rest of the space didn't exist, only the narrow world inside that rectangle of light. His hands moved quickly, tapping, shifting, a rhythm that seemed both deliberate and restless. From where I stood, I couldn't quite tell what had captured him so completely. Maybe it was a game. Maybe a movie. Something that demanded focus, that pulled him in so deeply he hadn't noticed the door. Or maybe, he had noticed, and just didn't move. I stepped forward. Not enough to be seen, but enough to change the angle of my view. And then I froze. An icy rush swept through me, sudden and absolute, like stepping into cold water without warning. My heart stuttered in my chest, my breath catching before I could stop it. Something in his expression, something about the way his eyes stayed fixed, the way his mouth tightened, the way his shoulders seemed locked, made my stomach twist. This wasn't just distraction. It was something else. I didn't yet have the words for it, but my body reacted before my mind could catch up. The small hairs along my arms lifted, my chest tightened, and for a fleeting moment, I wanted to step back into the safety of the hallway. But I didn't. I stayed. And in staying, I saw what I was never meant to see. Chapter 4, The Unraveling Moment. The air inside that room felt different from the hallway, thicker, heavier. It wasn't just the dim light or the faint hum of his laptop fan. It was the sense that I had intruded into a place where the walls themselves were holding on to something they shouldn't. I leaned forward the slightest bit, my hand still resting on the doorframe. The floor beneath me gave a quiet creak, a small, almost imperceptible sound. But Liam didn't turn. He didn't even flinch. That alone sent a ripple through me. His eyes were locked to the screen, unblinking, as though the world outside of it had faded away entirely. The pale light highlighted the faint angles of his face, the set of his jaw, the subtle tension in his neck. Shadows pooled under his eyes, the kind that came from too many late nights. And then, in one flicker of motion, my perspective shifted just enough to catch what was on the screen. It was nothing I had prepared myself for. Nothing I had expected. The realization hit me not in one clean strike, but in a slow, unraveling wave. My breath thinned, my heartbeat quickened, and a cold, hollow space seemed to open inside my chest. I don't know how long I stood there, seconds, maybe less, but it felt like time stretched in every direction. His posture changed ever so slightly. His shoulders tightened. His hand froze halfway through a movement. And then, as if some invisible thread had tugged his attention toward me, his gaze shifted, just enough for our eyes to meet. It wasn't a long look. It didn't need to be. The heat rose instantly to his cheeks, blooming red under the cool glow of the screen. His mouth parted as if to speak, but for a moment, no sound came out. Then, in a voice just above a whisper, I'm sorry. Those words didn't fill the silence. They deepened it. The weight in the air didn't lift, it thickened, pressing between us. I could feel the heat of my own skin, the pounding in my ears, the awkward collision of shock, confusion, and something I didn't dare name. I wanted to look away. I wanted to step back. But I stayed there, caught in that strange, fragile space between moving forward and fleeing. And in that pause, something shifted. Something I knew couldn't be undone.